The anime opens with a female voice explaining that at the dawn of time, God created humanity and then created witches. He shared his power with the witches and told them they would guide powerless humans on his behalf. Hearing this, the witches accepted his words and promised to devote themselves to helping humans as their friends. In the present day, however, humans despise witches and hunt them down. The scene shifts to the world empire of Rhedia, where the Witch Hunt Memorial Assembly is underway. There we see a witch crying and cursing humans in anger, wishing for their death. Next, the setting moves to the empire of Rhedia's Solsabia region, where a young man named Adonis is traveling. He asks Chloe how much farther they have to go, clearly suffering from the heat. Chloe tells him to be quiet because she's checking their location. The boy, who is our protagonist, asks why she can't just use magic to cool them down. Chloe, a nice witch, snaps back that her magic isn't for foolish things like that. She warns him that if he keeps complaining, she's going to leave him behind, and there will be no era fun time for him later. While Chloe tries to figure out their location with a map, Adonis pulls out his phone like a nerd to find it faster. She scolds him the moment she sees the strange device, reminding him that she warned him using it would get them tracked. But he explains it's a smartphone, and since he built it himself, it can't be traced. Bro thinks he's Tony Stark. Instead of radio waves, it uses magic with multidimensional photons, which makes it impossible for the army to track them. Chloe doesn't understand a word of his explanation, and he mocks her, saying paper maps are outdated anyway. He adds that he'll make her a smartphone soon too, which gets him smacked in the head by Chloe for being so smug and trying to riz her up. Eventually, she figures out where they are and asks if he plans to just sit there forever. Adonis ignores her and asks why they're even running. Chloe reminds him it's because she's a witch. Lately, people have been treating witches more harshly, and survival has gotten harder. She explains that lying low and staying away from crowded places makes her feel more like a ninja than a witch. Despite trying to lighten the mood, Adonis stays upset, so she keeps trying to cheer him up. Before they move on, she advises him not to speak until they've crossed the border. As they walk, Chloe mentions that if they want to live in peace, they'll need to find a place that accepts witches. Then maybe he could go to a school and do what he wants. Hearing that, Adonis reminds her she said not to talk until they cross the border. He also admits he doesn't care about school. He says he'd rather keep studying with her, and when she hears that, she teasingly asks if he's into older women. Embarrassed and frustrated, he fumbles by saying that it's not like that. As they continue their journey, Chloe seems to be enjoying herself way too much, which makes Adonis wonder how she can be so carefree without feeling even a hint of frustration. He tells us that he hates the Empire of Rhedia and believes the only answer might be wiping out humanity with magic. His role model is probably Eren Yeager, or someone that couldn't get into an art school. Suddenly, Adonis senses something rushing toward them at high speed. The scene shifts to the 8th Western Squadron heading straight for Chloe and the protagonist. The moment they spot her, they report to headquarters and announce that they are moving in to eliminate the fugitive witch. Adonis steps up and says he'll take care of them, but Chloe stops him, telling him he still lacks experience. She then uses her ice magic, Oriato, to launch an attack on the squad. In the next scene, a man apologizes to Emperor Goth of Rhedia for failing the mission. He explains that Chloe is a high-level witch who uses ice magic, and a single squad wasn't enough to handle her. Goth's guards cut him off, ordering him to be quiet and then striking him across the face for questioning the Emperor. Goth finally tells them that's enough, then demands they bring him the witch immediately. He refuses to let her escape. Back with Chloe and Adonis, she admits she's exhausted and wants to keep moving. Adonis, clearly upset, asks why she never lets him do anything when he knows how to use magic. He questions why he can't fight if he already knows how to cast spells that could easily handle those weaklings. Chloe reminds him once again that it's because he still lacks magical experience. Just then, a massive sword appears beside him, and Adonis asks whether being her apprentice isn't enough. Chloe ignores that and warns him that if he keeps complaining, she's going to get angry. But Adonis doesn't back down and keeps pressing her. He finally asks if she won't let him fight because those soldiers are humans just like him. He figures she's too kind-hearted and doesn't want to kill them. He thinks she's hiding her real feelings so he won't grow to hate people. Because of that, she also won't let him face them. Adonis, overwhelmed, confesses that he can't stand being unable to protect her any longer. Seeing him cry out of frustration, Chloe walks over and hugs him tightly to comfort him. While they're holding each other, a tracker from the human squad locks onto their location, allowing the army to find them. Suddenly, a beam of light shines down on them, lifting both Chloe and Adonis into the air. As it happens, Chloe realizes this is something even a witch can't do, since transferring physical matter over such a long distance is impossible. Adonis tries to calm her and reaches out his hand, promising he'll stay by her side. The scene shifts to a new location where they confirm that the success rate for extradimensional transfer is now 99%. With that confirmation, someone decides to activate the transfer protocol and send them to the central plaza of the capital. Next, we see Emperor Goth delivering a speech to the public. He says that magic has protected them for a long time. Whether it was natural disasters or plagues, people have always depended on witches. This used to make everyone feel grateful, which led to them worshipping witches. Yet people also feared them, since magic goes beyond human understanding, which felt unfair. Goth then asks the crowd if humans are really so weak that they had to bow down to witches and beg for their help. He tells them he doesn't think so. Their ships already sail the skies, their cities no longer fear storms, and their trains cross vast regions, opening up new frontiers. In their hands, they hold the fruits of all human knowledge. He's referring to their smartphones, which represent the Empire's technological boom known as the Gear Expansion. Because of this, he declares they are not weak. Even without magical powers, humans can shape and control the world. That's why Goth tells his people the time has come to wipe out witches and show the world who truly rules it. His words ignite the crowd, and they begin to cheer and applaud wildly. Suddenly, the transfer is complete. Adonis and Chloe appear right in front of everyone. Emperor Goth steps forward to meet them, and Adonis tells Chloe to run while he faces the Emperor himself. However, when he tries to move, he's quickly restrained by the guards. Goth, upon seeing the boy, is shocked that a witch would raise a human. To him, it's a sign that the world is getting worse. But Chloe suddenly snaps, and she threatens to kill everyone in the plaza if they don't release her apprentice. When the Emperor stays silent, she summons her ultimate spell, Absolute Zero, and warns the crowd that she doesn't want to do this. She explains that if she destroys them, her apprentice will be left with no home, and that's the only reason she spared them in the first place. However, now that they've proven themselves too dangerous, she decides to end her own life. Yet when she tries, her magic instantly breaks apart, leaving her stunned. Goth smugly tells her that science has given them the SDM2, a photonic device that suppresses magic. As he walks toward her, he says maybe she never imagined that the same human she once helped would end up hunting her down. Now he declares it's time for witches to surrender the world, and right then, he strips her in front of everyone. He slaps her across the face and mocks her, saying that without magic, a witch is nothing but an ordinary woman. The crowd laughs, and in a disturbing display, they all pull out their smartphones and take pictures of her exposed body, thinking it's funny. Meanwhile, Adonis watches helplessly, crying as he sees his master being humiliated, and he swears they'll all pay with their lives. Seeing the public reaction, Goth orders his guards to kill the boy. Chloe, panicking, begs the Emperor to let the child live and claims full responsibility. She tells him he's right, witches do need to be eradicated. She says the boy is just a human she kidnapped and raised as a slave, so he shouldn't be punished. Adonis can't believe what he's hearing. Seeing her cry and lie like that crushes him, and in desperation, he writes a spell on the ground, ready to blow up everything. But the spell doesn't work, and as he keeps crying, he watches her about to be executed. Chloe looks into his eyes and thanks him for everything, and it triggers a flashback to the day she found him alone on the streets. She remembers it too, and tells him she was happy to have met him. Just before she can say she loves him, Goth pulls the trigger and kills her. The guards then shoot her repeatedly to make sure she's dead. Adonis screams in despair, begging them to stop, as he recalls the joy and peace he once had with his master. Meanwhile, the humans keep cheering. They go as far as cutting off Chloe's head to use it as a trophy, continuing to desecrate her even after death. The story jumps 10 years ahead, to the capital of the Redia Empire, now called New Nightmare. In the 7th district of the Mayhem internment camp, prisoners are seen fighting over scraps of food. A young girl named Daroka steps in and tells them to stop fighting, offering them her bread instead. Her friend Anna asks if she's okay with that, since she already gave her bread away to another woman earlier. Daroka says it's fine because she has plenty of energy, though Anna still worries about her. She says Daroka is way too kind, especially compared to herself, who only thinks about surviving. Anna vents her frustration, saying that even with the gear expansion and all the technological advances, people still fight and nothing has changed. Wars are still happening, and she remembers how people used to claim that once the witches were gone, humanity would be happy. Then she starts crying, saying she no longer understands what's going on. Trying to cheer her up, Daroka tells her to raise her head and plays with her stuffed toys to make her smile. It works, and Anna gives a small smile, but just then, the guards show up and call for a prisoner. Daroka notices that Anna's prisoner number matches the one they're calling, so she quietly switches their tags. The scene shifts as Daroka is taken to the office of the chief guard, a man named Parpalu. He sizes her up and says she looks healthy. Then he tells her to strip so he can inspect her body and make sure she's acceptable for her new master. He adds that this facility is funded by the Empire's taxpayers, so she now has to serve the people. She turns around and sees many other girls locked up in terrible conditions, which horrifies her. But Parpalu tells her not to worry, she'll get used to it. Then he asks her who brought the gear expansion and who used military might and science to defeat the witches in the name of human dignity. As he grabs her by the clothes, he says the answer is clear: the Empire of Redia. He snaps a photo of her and says he'll be able to sell it for a good price at headquarters. But Daroka suddenly bites his finger and takes off running. Now we see her sprinting through the facility, clutching Parpalu's stolen phone. She plans to use it to free all the prisoners. She tries, but it's locked by voice authentication. After several failed attempts, she finally manages to mimic Parpalu's voice well enough to unlock the cells. All at once, chaos erupts as the imprisoned girls begin to escape. In the confusion, Doroka runs into another room, only to get caught again. But as she looks around, she realizes she's accidentally released someone else, a prisoner who had been heavily guarded and now looks absolutely furious. The next scene opens with Adonis finally freed. Without hesitation, he unleashes his power and goes straight for the guards dressed as humans. One by one, he tears through them, killing each with brutal efficiency. Doroka watches in shock, panicking as he approaches. She apologizes, thinking he's about to shoot her, especially when he raises his weapon. However, Adonis wasn't aiming to hurt her. He simply shoots off her iron restraints to set her free. Meanwhile, the entire detention camp is thrown into chaos. All the cells have been unlocked, and the staff scrambles under emergency status. At the National Security Headquarters, reports come in about the uprising, so Chief Yamato immediately instructs one of his subordinates to head to the site and assess the situation. He also authorizes the use of Class 5 weapons or higher. The young executor accepts the command and assures him that he will preserve the Empire's peace using his overwhelming strength. Deputy Director Yuki reminds him not to take that peace for granted, since it was hard-won by the Emperor himself. As the executor, Ichikawa, walks off, Yuki mutters that the boy is too disrespectful toward Yamato, but Yamato calmly responds that despite his attitude, Ichikawa is still one of their top imperial executioners just like her. Back at the detention facility, chaos reigns. Bodies are everywhere. Parpalu, surveying the aftermath, curses the mess they're in. His subordinates tell him the escaped girl managed to trick his phone by mimicking his voice. Parpalu is stunned and even more furious once he realizes it was his personal device she used. He mutters that this is bad, really bad. He doesn't even know how he's going to explain this to the higher-ups. But then he pauses, thinking it doesn't make sense. Even if she passed the voice authentication, her clearance level shouldn't have let her unlock that particular cell, the one holding a prisoner classified as SS level threat. Elsewhere, Adonis sits high atop a tower, writing a new spell. He finishes the formulation called Gain, which boosts the size of anything it's applied to. Before he thinks about using it on his Woody under the hoodie, he uses it on his gun and fires a single bullet that transforms midair into a massive missile. The result is devastating as a huge section of the city is destroyed in one shot, aimed directly at the population. Back on the ground, Ichikawa wipes out every prisoner in his path, leaving no survivors. He radios Yamato to report that the boy isn't in any of the buildings he searched. But just then, a call comes through saying someone just fired on a building. Ichikawa is ordered to reroute immediately. Before leaving, he turns and coldly shoots Parpalu and his team, blaming them for the entire disaster. Meanwhile, Doroka has already escaped. Seeing the enormous magical bullet tearing through the sky, she freezes in place, overwhelmed. Guilt crashes down on her as she realizes this might all be her fault. We cut to Adonis again, now barefoot, wandering the city as news of the attack spreads across screens and speakers. But he knows deep down that his master wouldn't praise him for what he's about to do. Instead, she'd remind him that revenge won't bring her back, and if he really escaped, he should just live his life. He stops, shaken, realizing it's been 10 years, yet he still can't forget. Her eyes, her voice, her final words as they haunt him. Thinking of how much he still loves her, Adonis begins to write another spell. Moments later, the streets beneath the city start to collapse. The ground shakes violently, and terrified citizens run for their lives. From deep beneath the earth, a massive monster rises. It's summoned through the magical formulation called Giant. The towering creature tears through the city, destroying everything in its path as it holds Adonis gently in its massive hands. Meanwhile, a police officer receives a strange call about a giant appearing, but he brushes it off, thinking it's nonsense. Suddenly, a car crashes straight into the police office, leaving everyone stunned. The officer rushes to the wreck to check on the driver, who frantically tells him about the giant he just saw. The officer assumes the guy must be high. Yet once he steps outside to contact narcotics, he sees the unbelievable sight for himself and realizes the man wasn't lying. We then shift scenes to Adonis moving through the city atop his giant, pressing forward toward Emperor Goth. At the National Security Headquarters, Yamato receives word that a giant robot is approaching. It has already passed through the business district and is now heading into District 5. Yamato asks if they've alerted the Emperor yet, but his agent replies that they haven't, because the Queen has forbidden it. Apparently, the Emperor's current condition is unstable. Yamato, hearing that, declares a state of emergency under his authority. He orders all remaining aerial ground units to focus on defending the 4th defense line. He also demands that armored infantry units be sent in immediately. He expects limited engagement, so he wants the city shielded fast. After issuing his commands, Yamato steps outside to see the giant with his own eyes and is stunned by what he finds. Just then, His sister Yuki informs him that the prisoner and his pen are both missing from the internment camp. She believes the giant is being controlled with magic. Yamato, processing this, says that it might actually make their job easier. He then asks where the photonic suppression device is. His subordinate replies that the device has been stored underground for the past 10 years, so they aren't sure if it even still works. Yamato tells Yuki to take charge of it personally, since this issue threatens the entire nation. Meanwhile, Adonis continues tearing through the city with his giant, starting his own version of the rumbling. Eren would be proud, but suddenly they come under attack. The fourth line of defense responds with military tanks. However, the tanks prove completely ineffective. Their weapons can't even touch the giant, which keeps moving and destroying everything in sight. Furious, Adonis shouts at them that they're all going to die. He then slams a building with the giant's fist, causing its debris to rain down and crush the tanks below. We then learned that over the past 10 years, scientists have been running simulations on Adonis' mind. That time wasn't wasted. Thanks to those constant mental simulations, Adonis has perfected himself into a living weapon capable of destroying a nation. In this world, people who aren't witches can only use magic through magical formulations. That means breaking down magic into systems and mechanisms, and translating those into mathematical expressions using a special pen. It's a technique very few can master, but Adonis is different. He had an extraordinary teacher. Because of that, Adonis sees no difference between the people who were present 10 years ago and those who weren't. To him, if killing his master was the end result, then every citizen who enjoyed the fruits of that nation is equally guilty. Without hesitation, he summons 2 weapons and begins firing on the civilians, determined to take revenge. As the bodies fall, Adonis mutters that it's amazing, but then something shifts inside him. He pauses and wonders what this feeling is, because despite what he expected, he doesn't feel satisfied. Just then, each scout successfully locates Adonis and immediately sends his coordinates to Yamato. Yamato informs all his troops that their target is Adonis, the apprentice of the witch who is standing on the giant's hand. In response, fighter pilots ready their weapons to give him the King Kong treatment and begin launching attacks toward him. Their assault not only targets the giant, but also obliterates large parts of the city, throwing the civilians into deeper chaos and panic. Doroka, witnessing a child in danger, dives in and manages to save him just in time. She rushes him over to a nearby woman, urging her to take care of him and leave the area as fast as they can. She says she has something else to do. Meanwhile, Adonis lies on the ground after getting blasted by the missiles. Though bruised, he mutters that he must be getting rusty. Elsewhere, in the Imperial Castle Sanctuary, Emperor Goth complains about the noise and mess outside. He wonders aloud how long he has been asleep, and his wife gently tells him it's only been half an hour. She encourages him to rest, saying the Empire is strong enough to manage without him for now. She explains that the Empire owes its strength to a certain great ruler. Goth, hearing her, smiles and says that perhaps that ruler only succeeded thanks to the support of a certain queen. Suddenly, he starts coughing violently. Blood spills from his mouth, and the queen panics, yelling at the guards to go get Dr. Griffin immediately. But the Emperor waves her off and insists there's no need. He says he is fine. Then, staring at his trembling hand, he wonders if this is some sort of divine curse. Still, he declares that he has no regrets. He believes that by building a civilization on hyperscience and wiping out the witches, he advanced progress. Goth believes humanity must shape its own future, and the new era has no need for magic. That is why he still feels his choices were justified. But even as he says that, Adonis continues massacring everyone outside, using his powerful magic to bring ruin to the city. Back at the castle, rain begins to fall, and the Empress gently says that the rain will wash away all the fatigue he has carried for years. Goth looks at her and says she's like a flower that bloomed amid slaughter. The scene cuts to the National Security Headquarters, where agents watch in shock as Adonis wipes out an entire army of soldiers. Suddenly, one of the operatives informs Yamato that a new individual is approaching the target. Meanwhile, Adonis is shown torturing a soldier who grits his teeth and tells him they should have killed him together with the witch. Hearing that, Adonis agrees and prepares to finish him off for good. Right before he strikes, Doroka steps in and begs him to stop killing the people of the Empire. She asks him if all this destruction isn't enough already, then tells him that she can't stand to see more innocent people die. But Adonis stares her down and crushes the soldier to death without hesitation. After that, he laughs at her for calling them innocent. He says he regrets being missiled by her and declares that it doesn't matter whether they're from Rhedia or anywhere else. As far as he's concerned, all humans are his enemies now. He says he plans to wipe them all out, even if they're prisoners. Doroka then brings up Chloe, saying that this isn't what she would have wanted. Mentioning that name catches Adonis off guard. She tells him that she knows Chloe meant a lot to him, and she also knows this kind of massacre isn't what she would have wished for. However, her words only make Adonis even angrier. He glares at her and growls, telling her not to speak Chloe's name so carelessly. Adonis stares her down and asks what exactly she thinks she's trying to do. Then he accuses her of playing dirty, like all humans do. He says that's the one thing humans are good at, cheating. Daroka stands her ground while Adonis coldly admits that without playing dirty, the humans would never have won. He tells her to stop interfering and stay out of his way, but Daroka gently brings up something else. She reminds him of what his teacher used to call him, and then reveals that she is also a witch. This catches him completely off guard. His expression changes in an instant, and without warning, he grabs her by the neck. He accuses her of lying because as far as he knows, there are no witches left alive. Daroka struggles to breathe but insists that everything she said is true. She survived the witch hunt. Adonis grits his teeth and growls at her, then asks why she didn't say Chloe if she really was a witch. Daroka lowers her head and apologizes. She tells him that all the other witches had fled in a panic, but Adonis snaps back, saying that apologies won't bring Chloe back. Daroka quietly tells him that Chloe will come back. Hearing that, Adonis freezes, staring at her in disbelief. She says it again, calmly repeating that they're going to bring Chloe back. Furious, Adonis throws her to the ground. He's enraged, thinking she's mocking his teacher's memory. As he prepares to kill her for good, Daroka quickly speaks up and reveals the truth. She tells him that she infiltrated this country for one reason, to free him, because if they want to bring Chloe back, they need his memories. But Adonis doesn't listen. He says it doesn't matter. He's already decided to kill anyone who stands in his way, even her. Daroka meets his glare without flinching and says he can do what he needs to do. Then, with a calm and sincere smile, she says she's glad she met him. Her words hit him hard. They trigger memories of Chloe, and soon tears begin to well up in his eyes as the thought of possibly bringing her back starts to sink in. Daroka reaches out her hand toward him and tells him that he's not alone anymore. But just as she does, a sudden gunshot rings out. The bullet hits her in the back, taking her life instantly while Adonis watches in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. Standing in the distance, each Kaut lowers his gun. He scoffs and complains that he missed his shot. He had hoped to kill them both in one blow. We shift to one of Daroka's memories, where the Empire is slaughtering the witches. She watches the massacre unfold, completely horrified, and suddenly panics, thinking she has been caught. However, the person behind her is Mia, who also doesn't understand what's going on. Mia tells her the humans launched a surprise attack, and Daroka can't believe it since everyone seemed to be getting along fine. Seeing the situation, Daroka suggests they use magic, but Mia quickly tells her that they can't. The humans brought a machine that nullifies magic. Mia thinks maybe Ophelia knows something, so she tells Daroka to escape and report everything to her. Daroka pleads with her to go together, but Mia insists she goes alone since she's already been wounded. Mia tells her to follow the Revelation Star, which will guide her to Ophelia's mansion. Before she leaves, she tries to cheer Daroka up using her puppets, then urges her to run as fast as she can. Daroka nods and bolts down the path, hugging her puppet tightly and not daring to look back. Back in the present, Adonis is devastated as Daroka bleeds out in front of him. Before she loses consciousness, he begs her to tell him how to bring Chloe back. While she tries to explain, Imperial troops begin firing on him, forcing Adonis to dodge their shots while listening. He looks over at Chloe's body and gets even angrier, feeling like Daroka just toyed with him and gave him no real answer. His frustration boils over. He casts a spell that blocks incoming bullets, leaving the soldiers confused and panicked. After taking a few more hits, Adonis retaliates by redirecting their own attacks using magic. In a blinding wave of force, he wipes out most of the enemy soldiers, then moves in to finish the rest. As he approaches the last one, each Kaut fires at him from the top of a building, thinking the shot will kill him. But Adonis notices just in time and catches the bullet mid-air, stunning each Kaut. Without hesitating, Adonis activates his Gain Superior spell, enlarging the bullet and sending it flying back. Each Kaut is helpless as the massive projectile crashes into him, killing him on the spot. Adonis then walks toward the final soldier, disgusted by humanity. He stares directly at the man and declares that he's going to erase every last human from existence. He wants them all to feel the same fear and despair that Chloe felt. Watching all this unfold, Yamato starts to panic and urges Yuki to hurry. Meanwhile, Yuki arrives at the underground vault and is shocked by the sheer size of the DM, the device built to defeat witches. She knows once it's activated, magic will be nullified, so she gets excited thinking she can finally be useful to her brother. She orders her subordinates to activate it, but members of the National Science Agency block the way. Theta Samunsta, the agency's director, steps in and firmly tells Yuki she cannot allow the device to be powered up. Yuki isn't having it. She draws her weapon and demands an explanation. The scene shifts again, and Yamato gets a call from his sister. He asks why the DM hasn't been activated yet. To his surprise, it's Theta on the other end. She calmly asks for a moment to explain, but Yamato cuts her off, saying they don't have time. Still, she insists and tells him they must not activate the photonic suppression device. She reminds him that science has guided humanity forward, yet despite everything they've uncovered, there's still so much they don't understand. That includes the very particles emitted by the DM. When Yamato says he doesn't follow, she brings up human cellular dysfunction. He recognizes the name, saying it's a disease that started affecting soldiers who fought in the witch hunts 10 years ago. Theta tells him that while many factors could be at play and she can't be certain, she believes the DM's particles kill cells, damaging the human body. Yamato is stunned. He admits no one ever told him that. Theta replies that's because the truth was hidden. On top of that, she adds that there are no witches left to heal the environment. The atmosphere, which once filtered those harmful rays, is gone, and nature is falling apart. A person exposed to too many particles now would literally fall apart. She reminds him what happened to the people who used the DM as their weapon for humanity. Hearing all this, Yamato begins to realize that the Emperor's illness might actually be caused by the device. Meanwhile, Adonis continues to massacre soldiers using their own bullets against them, showing no mercy. The next scene shows Yuki ignoring Theta's warnings. She storms ahead, determined to activate the DM, believing they can't afford to worry about some illness when magic itself is threatening to destroy them. So when Theta sees what Yuki is about to do, she orders everyone in the room to clear out immediately. Then she sprints toward Yuki, trying desperately to stop her. However, she arrives too late. Yuki activates the machine without any concern for the consequences. At that same moment, Adonis, who has been enjoying his slaughter of the humans, realizes that his magic is starting to vanish. Yamato, watching in alarm, asks Theta what just happened and where his sister is. She quietly tells him it's nothing to worry about, even though she's holding Yuki in her arms, barely clinging to life. As he continues to press her, she tells him to look straight ahead. Frustrated, she reminds him they couldn't defeat their enemy without nullifying magic, then asks if that boy really deserved all this. Yamato answers without hesitation, saying it's his job to swiftly eliminate anyone who poses a threat to the Empire. Theta agrees, saying that after all, they are Redia, the indestructible empire, so Yamato gives the order for all units to charge in. Adonis, now vulnerable without his magic, scrambles for his pen as the soldiers line up to fire. Suddenly, a female soldier steps into the line of fire and refuses to let them shoot. At the same time, a chunk of a building collapses between Adonis and the soldiers, scattering them. But the soldier who moved forward prepares to end Adonis's life, labeling him the apprentice of a witch. Adonis notices her dagger and for a moment feels relieved, believing he's finally about to die and reunite with Chloe. Then we see her slice off his head. The scene cuts, and the soldiers are stunned to see the same soldier return carrying Adonis's severed head. Once they confirm he's dead, they begin to cheer, joined by the people inside the National Security Headquarters. Yamato stares at the scene, struggling to believe what they've accomplished. He tells the troops they've done a great job, but warns them that it's too early to celebrate. He orders them to retrieve the witch apprentice's body, then survey the damage throughout the city and assist the rescue teams. While looking at a monitor, Yamato spots the soldier who killed Adonis and is surprised to see that she's just a young girl. He then instructs one of his men to contact both Director Theta and Deputy Director Yuki. Meanwhile, inside the DM control room, we see medics rushing Theta and Yuki out on stretchers. Both are seriously injured. The scene shifts again to the Imperial Castle Sanctuary, where the Emperor is furious that magic has survived. He's also upset that the boy taken from the witch 10 years ago has now turned on them. He curses the destruction Adonis caused, especially since he's only human, yet still a leftover of a world stained by magic. He then confesses that even after 10 years, he has no idea how that boy managed to use magic as a human, and for that reason, he admits he despises himself for letting him live back then. Still, he rallies the Empire not to fear, proclaiming that Redia stands at the top of the world. He believes the science and military power they've gained will never bow to evil, so he urges everyone to let the flames of pride burn in their hearts, reminding them they were born as people of the Redia Empire. Goth confidently declares that the old world is gone and that God is dead. In his eyes, this nation is the new God. We then jump to a school classroom where a teacher mourns the students who died. Still, he tells the class they must move on because national exam testing begins tomorrow. As he wraps up the lesson, one student raises his hand and asks why Adonis would side with the witch if he was human. The teacher admits he doesn't know and guesses maybe his mind was corrupted. Meanwhile, a classmate starts teasing Eri, who sits quietly staring at the desk that belonged to her now deceased boyfriend. Later, we see her standing in front of the victim's memorial wall, blaming the Empire for failing to protect its people. She apologizes to Takuma, believing he must hate her for abandoning him when he was trapped under the rubble. Eri calls herself the worst for running away. Then, feeling embarrassed, she blushes at the photos of Adonis, admitting that he looks handsome. Suddenly, a young man appears behind her and startles her. When she realizes he works for the government, she quickly tries to delete the photos from her phone. However, he stops her and says it's not necessary. He just asks her not to show those pictures to anyone. After all, the witch apprentice is the terrorist responsible for the entire disaster. Eri apologizes and bolts away, making up an excuse that she has somewhere to be. Oz watches her leave, then makes a phone call reporting that a girl possibly influenced by the terrorists should be arrested. He adds that whatever happens next is up to national security, but she might be executed or imprisoned for treason. We soon find out that this man is Oz Gorgeous, the deputy director of the National Intelligence Agency. He's speaking to Charmy, a researcher working under him. In the next scene, we see her complaining that her transfer request hasn't been approved. She also reveals that she's overworked and harassed by her boss. Then she updates Oz, saying they've received a disturbing new analysis and she'll send it to him right away, but Oz asks her to just give him a summary. So Charmy tells him bluntly, the witch apprentice's body is fake. The scene shifts, and he's being treated by the witches while writhing in pain. One of them checks his vitals and tells the others that his temperature, pulse, and blood pressure are all climbing rapidly. She believes that if it continues, his heart won't be able to take it. Another witch replies that she already suspected a human couldn't handle a heterotrophic transfer. While they all look at him with concern and he fights not to give in, Ophelia suddenly enters the room. She walks over and places a finger on his forehead, restoring his sanity by stimulating his brain. He keeps suffering, barely able to speak, and mumbles Chloe's name. Then the story jumps to the present, where he wakes up scared and injured, completely unaware of what just happened. He suddenly realizes he can see his own dead body, which leaves him in shock. Looking at the soldier who supposedly killed him, he discovers she's actually a witch who used replication magic to keep him alive. Confused, he stares at her as she introduces herself as Anna. She explains that she infiltrated the country with Daroka, and that everything so far has been part of a plan to bring Chloe back. She wants to get him out of there, but when he asks who they really are, she says he'll find out later. She then asks Ophelia to send him away. Suddenly, a spell wraps around him and launches him out of the area. In the next scene, he wakes up crying with relief until he hits the ground. As he struggles to stand, Ophelia embraces him and thanks him for fighting on behalf of the witches. However, he pulls away and demands to know who she is. After looking around, she tells him he has arrived in the land of the witches. One of the girls then wheels him through the area, and he silently observes all the women around him. Later, they ask if he's ready to walk. When he nods, they get excited. But when they bring up Chloe, he asks if they knew her. They say yes, because she was incredibly kind to them when they were little, and they all loved her deeply. Eventually, he's brought before Ophelia, so he asks his caretaker to let him stand. Ophelia stops him and says no human should taint this sacred place. She tells him that she can't even imagine what it took for him to reach this place. She also points out that his body has been through extreme stress, which prompts him to look at his own hand. He accepts her words, lowers his head, and stays quiet despite his frustration. Suddenly, a girl interrupts to report another bountiful harvest. He asks what they did to him since he remembers being trapped by something. Ophelia replies that he was merely invited here because he is Chloe's apprentice. When he asks if she also knew Chloe, she explains that there isn't a single witch in the nation who didn't. She says his teacher was more powerful, intelligent, cheerful, and kind than anyone else. Despite her mastery of ice, she radiated as much warmth as the sun. However, she was eventually exiled from the land of witches. He asks if it was because she taught magic to a human child. Ophelia looks surprised and assumes Chloe must have told him, but he clarifies that he simply figured it out. She uses this moment to explain that magic is irreplaceable for witches, like their very soul. It also symbolizes their friendship and devotion to God, who tasked them with guiding humanity. For that reason, it isn't something humans should ever learn to use. Even so, Chloe accepted him as her student. Since no one understood her intentions, the other witches begged her to give him up and return home. But Chloe always gave the same answer. She said she was sorry she couldn't, and she'd say it with a big smile. Hearing all this, he angrily asks if she's done telling her story. She calmly replies that she is. He's furious now, accusing them of kidnapping slaves and human children to subject them to heterotrophic transfer. After that, they teach them magical formulation and force them to fight. Since witches are nearly extinct, they need soldiers to survive. He tells Anna that Chloe, his master, is the only one who can craft pens, which is why they're so desperate to bring her back. Without another word, he turns away and calls the woman who saved him a manipulative witch. Anna, clearly fed up, grabs him and demands to know what he plans to do now that he knows the truth. She breaks down crying and begs him to help them, insisting Daroka's death can't be in vain. But he tells her his only plan is to bring Chloe back. After that, he'll do whatever Chloe wants. However, if Chloe ends up rejecting them, then every last witch will become his enemy. Later that afternoon, Ophelia begins the ritual to resurrect Chloe. Meanwhile, he steps up to the Meadow tree, determined to bring his master back using a magical formula called nostalgic memories. As Chloe's memories start entering the body growing inside the fruit of the Meadow, he starts reminiscing about their time together. He remembers her constant lectures about constellations, which always annoyed him, but after memorizing all of them just to make her happy, he actually succeeded. She was shocked and proud, until he asked about the Adonis constellation, the one she made up herself. Chloe couldn't remember it, which led to a goofy argument about how to locate it in the massive night sky. Then he admits, from the bottom of his heart, that no matter how annoying those moments were, he wouldn't trade them for anything. He remembers how messy she used to be and how she never cleaned her clothes properly, blaming it on her injuries. One time, he accidentally saw her bathing through the curtain and freaked out. She called him a little pervert, which made him feel even more ashamed. Not knowing what to do, he blurted out that he'd go stand guard outside for incoming threats. That made Chloe tear up and thank him for always staying by her side. She once told him that if it hadn't been for him, she never would have survived on her own. And now in the present, he realizes he can't survive without her either. At that moment, a bright flash lights up beneath the Mito tree. Slowly, a witch's body begins to descend. Adonis suddenly refuses to bring Chloe back. Even though he still loves her, he doesn't want her to suffer in this broken world. He believes there's no place left for her here, so he casts a new version of the spell, Nostalgic Memories Replace, which catches everyone off guard, especially Ophelia. She stares in disbelief, unable to comprehend how he rewrote the ritual on the spot. In the next moment, Daroca is reborn. When he holds her in his arms, he quietly tells the others that he's not someone who leaves debts unpaid. Daroca wakes up confused and asks if they're in the witch's homeland. Looking around at the others, she struggles to understand why she's even here since the last thing she remembers is being shot. Her eyes suddenly widen when she realizes she's completely naked and in Adonis' arms, and she drops to her knees, crying and apologizing for exposing him to something so indecent. Without reacting, he stands up and hands her some clothes to put on. Then he reminds her that she saved him back in Rhedia, so now they're even. Still dazed, Daroca asks where Chloe is. That question hits hard. Ophelia also demands an answer and wants to know how he could just change everything when they all risked their lives to help him. She reminds him that they healed his wounds, stood by him, and fought to bring Chloe back. Anger spreads through the room. Ophelia calls him ungrateful, and the other witches begin to look at him with disgust. Then she turns to Daroca and asks if she's the one who filled Adonis' head with strange ideas. But before Daroca can say anything, he tells them all to shut up and makes it clear that it was his decision not to resurrect Chloe. Ophelia laughs bitterly, calling him just a regular human. She begins preparing to attack, but stops cold when she realizes he's not bluffing. He tells her he's been sentenced to life imprisonment, and now he plans to hunt humans on his own. He warns them to stay out of his way. A huge explosion rocks the place, and everyone assumes it's his doing. But it turns out Yamato, who had traveled to the moon, is the one behind the destruction of the Mito tree. As an army moves in, Yamato calls Adonis and Daroca the remnants of an evil race, trapped like rats inside a lunar cage. Adonis fires back, asking how he can say that after inviting him to this graveyard in the first place. Suddenly, Aurea jumps in and tries to extinguish the Mito tree using her water magic mural, but a soldier from the Empire quickly kills her, slicing her head clean off. Ophelia, alarmed by how bad things are getting, turns to Santa Maria and begs her to act. Santa Maria casts a spell that outfits all the witches in full combat armor. The fighting gets brutal. Adonis goes straight for Yamato and manages to shoot him multiple times with his own weapon. Laughing, he keeps firing until Daroca suddenly appears, pleading with him to stop. Meanwhile, Crystal Maya uses her gemstone magic to freeze the invading soldiers. Dakia, the Fang Witch, joins in, launching poison attacks through her snake god magic. Griana follows up by unleashing giant centipedes to devour the rest. Once most of the army is crushed, Ophelia finally steps in herself. She unleashes her law of nature magic, casting a terrifying spell called Death Game that wipes out wave after wave of soldiers. Covered in blood, she mocks how weak humans are and encourages her witches, saying they're going to win this. But that moment is short-lived. She suddenly realizes that most of their forces have already been slaughtered by the overwhelming enemy numbers. The scene shifts. Theta appears frail, barely hanging on to life after being exposed to the DM. Even so, Dynasma, director of the National Authority Agency, starts grilling her about the remaining number of witches. Theta shows him Dash 89, a prototype satellite that was abandoned in space after the witch extermination operation. Through it, he can see countless witch corpses, but something's off. The witches somehow gained control of the satellite. Dynasma accuses them of using stolen science to escape, and Theta confirms it. She apologizes for not discovering it earlier, but Dynasma cuts her off. He wants to know how the witches built the structure on the moon and how it managed to avoid their astronomical wave radars with magical camouflage. Unsatisfied, he scolds her, reminding her that the National Science Agency is supposed to be the pride of the Empire. With all the funding they receive, he demands to know how she plans to fix this disaster. Dynasma is livid. He says the public believes witches were wiped out years ago, and now this failure can't be erased, even if Theta pays with her life. Right then, Shirasagi, the director of national intelligence, interrupts and tells Dynasma to stop yelling. He calmly says the current threat needs handling first. They can assign blame later. The story cuts back to Yamato, who mourns Yuki's condition. She was always by his side, and never let bureaucracy stop her, which is why she broke the rules to activate the DM. He reminds Theta that she promised everything was under control and that science would save them. Now he breaks down, saying it kills him to see Yuki like this at just 14 years old. In the next scene, Yamato turns his rage on Adonis. He believes everything that happened is his fault. Fueled by hatred, he powers up his suit to 500% and demands they finish their fight right now. Yamato uses his incredible speed to land a heavy blow on Adonis, then questions how he, a human, can side with the witches. As he prepares to attack again, he imagines that once this fight is over, he'll finally be able to find peace alongside his sister. At that moment, the director of the National Command launches his anti-witch Aegiri technique, which quickly surrounds all the witches on the battlefield. His assault wipes out a massive number of them, prompting Crystal Maya to shout for the remaining witches to take cover behind her. However, before they can react, Yamato's next strike cuts through her as well, taking her life and leaving Ophelia in stunned silence. On another part of the battlefield, Doroka narrowly escapes death thanks to Anna, who manages to activate her duplication magic just in time. But while Doroka watches, Anna thanks her for their friendship with a smile before her head drops to the ground, taken by Yamato's blade. Back on Earth, the Military Control Center calls out for a status report, unaware that the lunar surface is now drenched in blood. Doroka weeps beside her friend's lifeless body, overwhelmed by grief. Seeing the carnage, Adonis finally turns to Yamato and coldly vows to kill him for his stupidity. Yamato ignores him and sends an update to the base, stating that the only thing left is to finish off the final target. Determined to fight seriously, Adonis covers his entire body in metal armor, ready to go all out. During the battle, he's stunned by Yamato's advanced tech, which not only restores his body but also regenerates weapons mid-fight. Meanwhile, the surviving witches watch the clash from a distance and begin to lose hope, believing this to be the end. Despite her critical injuries, Ophelia uses her last breath to beg them not to give up. They look toward the burning remains of the Mido tree, thinking extinction is inevitable. But Daiki refuses to let despair take hold and urges everyone to stand their ground, insisting they can't afford to lose any more sisters. She pleads for their support so Adonis can destroy the National Security Command once and for all. Just as she finishes speaking, a soldier sneaks up behind her and kills her on the spot. The troops then move in, ready to eliminate the remaining witches without mercy. At the same time, Yamato activates his armor at full power, creating a powerful whirlwind that rips through the area. With one devastating burst of speed, he pierces Adonis straight through with his sword. However, just when Yamato thinks he has won, he realizes too late that Adonis had already prepared a counterspell. With one swift motion, Adonis slices off Yamato's arm, and although Yamato manages to stop the bleeding, he cannot recover the limb. Gritting his teeth, Yamato tells him that he's too dangerous to be allowed to live and must die right here. Adonis, without flinching, replies that no matter how badly Yamato wants it, killing him isn't something he can do. Meanwhile, back on Earth, the people are left in the dark, unable to see anything happening on the moon. Just when they assume the operation is complete, they receive a signal. Upon decoding it, they learn that Yamato has sent a broadcast intended for everyone on the surface. He declares victory and asks that the news be relayed to the king, proudly announcing that all witches on the moon have been annihilated. Hearing this, everyone erupts into celebration, convinced they completed their mission. Right before Yamato can deliver the final blow, Doroka suddenly yells for everyone to stop. Yamato hears her voice but finds himself frozen in place, unable to move, while the man in armor laughs and explains that she must have cast some seriously strong magic. We cut back to see that Doroka has used her love-based spell called Mandragora, charming all the soldiers on the battlefield. She steps forward and calmly introduces herself to Yamato, identifying him as the one in charge and asking for his name. He gives it to her, although he doesn't understand why, then realizes with horror that the words came out of his mouth against his will. Yamato instantly senses the danger of her magic, yet the witches standing around still underestimate her powers. Staring him straight in the eye, Doroka refuses to break the spell and casts it again, forcing Yamato to struggle even harder to resist its effects. The man in armor chuckles while watching him squirm, then praises Doroka for her work and tells her to end it by slitting his throat. Instead, she reaches out with her hand and gently asks Yamato to stop fighting, hoping to bring peace. She proposes they shake hands and call a truce, leaving everyone speechless. She then offers him a deal. If he promises not to attack the witches or the armored man, she'll undo her spell and free his men. Hearing this, the man snaps, yelling that they killed Anna and destroyed everything. He says she must be insane to even think about letting the humans live after all they've done. He urges her to finish Yamato off now, warning that if she doesn't do it, he will. Right on cue, Yamato grabs Doroka by the neck, backing up the man's point. He punches her hard across the face, mocks her love spell, and coldly announces that science will wipe out every last witch. He claims there's no way they can reach peace because witches only spread fear and chaos, and their very existence harms the world. Then he brings up the past, asking if she even knows what the armored man did to his homeland. According to Yamato, That man unleashed a catastrophe that killed countless innocent people. He insists that if it weren't for the witches, none of this would have happened, and he'd never have turned into an enemy. Thinking of his sister, he admits he blames magic for everything, saying she would have never been hurt if it didn't exist. Daroka quietly pushes back, pointing out that humans have also taken many innocent lives. Her words hit him like a brick. She shows him the battlefield soaked in blood and reminds him of the witch hunts, asking what possible justification there could be for such cruelty. Even if science has made witches obsolete, she can't understand why they must be murdered. She mourns the fact that witches and humans were once friends, then pleads once more for him to end this fight and pull back his forces. Yamato laughs and refuses outright, so Daroka responds by forcing him to obey with her magic. He struggles, trying with all his strength to resist, and begins to wonder what this strange feeling is that's creeping into him. As his body locks up, we're pulled into Yamato's mind, where his younger self runs toward a woman he's desperate to reach. When he finally hugs her, joy floods his face. Back in reality, he looks at Daroka and agrees to do as she says. He tells her he'll obey because he's in love with her, but before he can even finish his sentence, the armored man drives a blade straight through his body and decapitates him on the spot. He tells Daroka that all he has left is revenge, and it's the only thing that still drives him. Then he calmly admits that her spell is unbelievably powerful and invites her to join him. Together, with her magic and his strength, he says they can wipe out humanity completely. There's no reason to pretend anymore. The scene shifts to the capital of the Rydia Empire, where the Emperor stands inside the royal palace at the Ivory Tower. He turns to a soldier and asks if the witches are finally going to die. The man reports that Director Yamato's strike team is still fighting, but the last witches are resisting fiercely. He adds that communication from the moon is unstable, so the exact situation isn't clear. The Emperor repeats his question, and the soldier responds again, saying he believes they're close to total victory. At that moment, Queen Andromeda asks whether Adonis, the apprentice of the witch and cause of all this, is still alive and fighting. The soldier nods, which makes the Emperor smile. He confesses that he wants the witches to burn, along with the moon if necessary, just to make sure that Brat dies with them. He starts rambling, asking the court if they also feel like today is a fantastic day. Staring up at the moon, he complains that the witches ran away up there just to escape after losing. Then he turns to his wife, takes her hand, and asks if she thinks he's amazing. She smiles and agrees, prompting him to ask for a hug while demanding praise. He starts laughing, celebrating the extermination of all the filthy witches, and the entire court erupts in applause. But one soldier watches him silently, clearly disturbed by the Emperor's worsening mental state. Even though he knew things were bad, he never imagined they'd reach this level. Suddenly, the queen assures him it's nothing to worry about, explaining that sometimes her husband just acts like a big baby. She calmly says his instability is normal after everything he's been through. In that moment, we learn she's using a love spell on him, whispering that he can now die peacefully since the witch hunt is complete. As the music swells, the Emperor walks off happily, ready to follow her instructions. He tells her that he's given her everything she's ever wanted, and would even offer up his own life if it makes her happy. Without hesitation, he climbs to the highest point of the castle and throws himself off, ending his life. The soldier, horrified by what he's seeing, begs him to come down, but the Emperor refuses. He yells that no one can stop him because he's the Emperor, the best, and the most important man alive. He boasts that thanks to him, Rydia has become the most powerful scientific nation in the world. To fulfill his wife's final wish, Goth kills every last witch, just like she asked. Tears of joy fall as he tells her he wishes he could serve her for all eternity. Hearing that, the queen chuckles and says he's going to make her blush, but then orders him to die already. Without hesitation, Goth throws himself backward into the abyss, even as his loyal soldier tries to grab him and stop it from happening. Now shaken, the soldier calls for backup over the radio, claiming there's a witch inside the castle, but the queen instantly casts her magic on him, twisting his memory and making him believe the Emperor simply slipped and fell. Still under the spell, the soldier quickly corrects himself and radios in a request to retrieve the Emperor's body. Meanwhile, the queen turns to Usagi and asks if he has anything to say about whether killing the Emperor was the right call. Usagi shrugs and says it doesn't really matter since that puppet was just taking up space anyway. He explains that her magic only affects men and doesn't work on women, which makes it incredibly dangerous. Because of that, he believes her power will always be seen as a threat, and the only way forward is to eliminate the rest of the witch's magic as well. He adds that once she does, the world will be hers, but she shoots that down fast and tells him she doesn't want this world at all. Then she reminds him that he already knows what she truly desires, warning that if he brings her another idiot like the last one, something bad is going to happen to him. Usagi calmly promises that the next man will be someone worthy of her, so she doesn't need to worry. Accepting that, she tells him not to call her queen anymore. From now on, he has to refer to her as Dorothea. Meanwhile, Adonis keeps pushing Daroka to help him destroy humanity, but she refuses again. He demands that she keep her magic active, then turns to face the remaining soldiers and launches an attack. Using his magical feather, he tortures them mercilessly, wanting them to cry just like he did back when he was a child. Daroka watches in horror as the bodies pile up, begging him to stop before it's too late. But he ignores her completely and keeps going, tearing into their bodies one by one. Seeing no other choice, Daroka prepares a spell and warns him that she'll use it. As soon as Adonis hears her and sees her stance, he walks up slowly and dares her to try, asking if she's really ready to die again. Then he goes right back to slaughtering the remaining soldiers, laughing to himself as they cry and beg for their lives. Daroka tries once more to reach him, saying this massacre won't bring any real change. She tells him that revenge only fuels more revenge, but Adonis yells back, demanding that she stop with those tired speeches. With tears in her eyes, Daroka tells him she's had enough. She doesn't want to continue this endless cycle anymore and says she's tired of watching so many lives get erased like they're nothing. Adonis still doesn't stop until every single soldier is dead, and once it's over, he walks over to Yamato's severed head and begins restoring his face. When he's finished, he casts Paravoice and perfectly mimics the director's voice, using it to declare that humanity will pay for everything with their extinction. Back on Earth, inside the National Science Agency, the mood is tense as they realize they still haven't heard anything from Yamato. Just when they start to fear the worst, the power cuts out and the entire building goes dark. Then out of nowhere, a message from the director arrives. In it, Yamato announces that the mission was a success and tells them to inform His Majesty that the witches on the moon have been completely wiped out. He claims it was a brutal fight and they lost many elite soldiers, but now no witches remain alive. He adds that he's the only survivor left on the moon after all his men die carrying out their duty, so he'll return to Earth alone and doesn't need any support. But as Theta watches the transmission, she narrows her eyes and tells the others that whatever they just saw on screen, it isn't Yamato. While that's happening, Adonis, still wearing Yamato's face, demands that they send him back to Earth because he misses the surface. He even promises to bring them the head of the witch's apprentice. Once the call ends, Adonis notices that all the surviving witches are staring at him with fear in their eyes. Ophelia finally speaks up and says this must have been his plan from the very beginning. She realizes he disguised himself as one of the soldiers to escape, even if it meant sacrificing every single witch. He doesn't respond, choosing instead to grab Daroka by force, insisting that her magic is far too valuable to leave behind. Daroka resists and hits him, asking how he can be so cruel and wondering what Chloe would think if she saw him now. Before either of them can say another word, the transfer begins and the two of them are pulled back to Earth, even though Daroka clearly doesn't want to go. As they disappear, Ophelia watches with tears in her eyes and says goodbye, calling him a child of evil and a twisted human. She breaks down crying, wishing that God will judge him someday, and turns to her girls to apologize for giving them false hope. She knows she failed to restore the dignity of the witches, and it crushes her. Right before leaving, Adonis quietly apologizes to all the witches for what he did. In the next scene, he and Daroka are just moments away from arriving at the National Science Agency. Theta, thinking that the person coming through is the apprentice disguised as Yamato, braces for the worst. She gathers a whole unit of soldiers and tells them to prepare for revenge, and the second the transfer finishes, she gives the order to open fire. Even after the attack, Theta quickly realizes none of her shots landed. The transfer technician explains that new instructions were inserted into the system and the coordinates were altered at the last second. They urge him to track the new location, but he says it's impossible to trace. Hearing that, Theta grits her teeth and slowly rises from her wheelchair. Blood pours from her mouth as she collapses to the ground, admitting that this round was Adonis's victory. Meanwhile, Adonis and Daroka arrive in a desolate sandy wasteland. She walks up to him, still stunned by everything, and he points to the southern triple cross in the sky, telling her it's proof they've returned to the surface. With blood still dripping down his body, he says they'll start reclaiming Rhedia little by little. Daroka, visibly shaken, flashes back to the moment just before they were transferred. She had heard Adonis request the system to send them to coordinates 37 and 42. Then he told her that they'd attack every village or city they found on the way to Rhedia. That way, they gather supplies, information, and especially the medicine he needs. But instead of agreeing, Daroka suddenly sits down in the sand and says she wants to go back to the other witches. Adonis immediately snaps and asks if she's an idiot, saying there's no way any witch could have survived on the moon. Still, she refuses to believe him and demands that he send her back. Frustrated, he accuses her of acting like a child, but Daroka fires back, saying he's the last person who should talk. After all, he only lives for revenge now. Adonis answers by activating the spell Nostalgic Memories and showing her what she's tried to forget. She watches the moment she begged Yamato to spare the witches and Adonis in exchange for her magic. She tells him to stop because she already knows what Yamato's answer was, Looking at her with pity, Adonis says he finally understands why she never fit in with the others. He tells her she must be out of her mind if she still believes reconciliation with humans is even possible. Daroka says she always wanted to meet him and understand what kind of person Chloe chose as her apprentice. Since he lived between two worlds, she hoped he'd be the bridge between humans and witches. Adonis brushes it off and says she doesn't know anything about him, so she asks how far he plans to take this revenge, because she realized on the moon that no matter how much he hates humanity, he'll never forgive people like them. She believes his vengeance will only spark another cycle of hatred, leading to an endless war until someone finally puts a stop to it. But Adonis coldly tells her that none of that matters because Chloe's life is worth more than the entire human race. That's why the world that took her away deserves nothing less than total annihilation. Daroka asks what he's willing to sacrifice to make that happen. Then she reminds him that it was his own fury that brought the humans to the moon in the first place. Adonis laughs bitterly and says that thanks to that, they're now standing on Earth again. Smirking, he admits that her friends ended up being the perfect smokescreen. Daroka breaks down crying, unable to believe how easily he says something so cruel. She's furious that he dares to diminish the lives of those witches, especially after everything they sacrificed just to survive. Adonis steps forward, grabs her by the collar, and demands to know who's really disrespecting them. Furious, he calls her an idiot for running her mouth so much. He reminds her that she saw her friends die with her own eyes, so how can she still talk about forgiving humans? He says that from where he stands, she's the one spitting on their memories. But even through her tears, Daroka argues that revenge won't heal anything, no matter how deep the pain runs. He lets go of her and says he doesn't care anymore because there's nothing left for him to lose, but she grabs him and tells him he's wrong. Chloe gave her life to protect his, and that means he still has something worth living for, even if the world is cruel and empty. She begs him not to let it turn him into something worse. Her words hit hard, and for a moment, Adonis can't respond. Daroka admits she's not asking him to forgive humanity, not after what they did. But if he holds on to that hatred and pushes forward with this path, he'll only end up shattering what's left of his heart. Eventually, he'll become no different from the humans who stole Chloe away. Holding him tighter, she says again that he still has plenty left to lose. Adonis sighs, clearly frustrated, and mutters that he knew she'd never understand. He explains that revenge is the only thing proving his existence now, the one reminder that he lived beside Chloe. Without it, he's terrified that even the memory of her will vanish completely. Daroka breaks down again, sobbing as she listens. Adonis looks at her and sarcastically asks if crying is the only way she exists. But before she can say anything, he suddenly collapses. She panics when she sees the blood loss finally caught up to him. As she leans over his unconscious body, a group of bikers appears in the distance and spots them. One of them chuckles and points out that there's a couple cuddled up under the moonlight. Another bursts out laughing, saying he can't believe they're actually hooking up in the middle of the desert. A third biker asks if they might be runaway slaves, but the group agrees they probably just look like a couple of kids who ran away from home. The scene cuts to Adonis waking up again, groaning that he's tired of always opening his eyes in some place he doesn't recognize. As he tries to piece things together, the memory comes back. He remembers Daroka still kneeling beside him, right when the bikers reached them. Daroka had begged them for help, which leads Adonis to assume they must be inside the bikers' hideout. Before he can act, a man named Punch interrupts and notices the glare in his eyes, asking if he plans to kill someone. Then, without waiting for an answer, he offers him a drink, claiming it's the best medicine for wounds. Adonis looks at his filthy appearance and tells him he's not about to drink sewer water. Laughing, Punch asks if that's what he calls humanity's greatest invention. He introduces himself as the leader and welcomes him, though Adonis quickly realizes this place has nothing to do with Rydia. When he asks where Daroka is, Punch says she was there just a few minutes ago. His men took her somewhere, and hearing that makes Adonis tense up. He demands to know what they've done to her, but Punch calmly tells him to relax and invites him outside. Adonis follows him and sees the settlement for the first time. Punch calls it El Paramo, saying it's the forgotten side of industrial progress, where refugees, ex-slaves, and outcasts from developing countries live. Everyone who science has left behind seems to end up here. While surveying the camp, Adonis notices that the drink is manufactured in Rydia, which instantly puts him on edge. As he narrows his eyes, he suddenly hears Daroka screaming nearby. He spots her in the middle of a crowd and asks what's happening. Punch says that women rarely come through here and then chuckles, admitting he enjoys hearing her scream. Without waiting, Adonis dashes through the crowd, ready to destroy anyone who touches her. But just as he's about to go off, he realizes Daroka isn't in danger. She's riding a motorbike, trying to learn how to handle it. She's yelling out of fear, struggling to follow the men's instructions. Seeing Adonis standing there, she smiles with relief, happy that he's finally awake. That moment of distraction makes her slip on a soda can and fall off the bike. When she gets up, she shyly offers him some toy figures, trying to apologize for her behavior earlier. But Adonis coldly says he doesn't want them, which completely shatters her. Before she can respond, Punch shows up again, announcing that it's time for a party. His men cheer with excitement. He then turns to Adonis and Daroka and says they have to help since the gang rescued them. That night, during the celebration, Daroka is busy serving drinks to the people of El Paramo, smiling like nothing's wrong. Suddenly, an old man reaches out to grope her chest, and she instantly panics and runs away. Later on, Adonis watches her from a distance, clearly upset. She notices his stare and lowers her head sadly. The men nearby ask her if she got into a fight with her boyfriend, but she quickly says they're not together. That only raises more questions about why the two of them are traveling alone. One of the younger guys, overhearing the conversation, suggests maybe they're runaways too, like the rest of them after Reedy have destroyed their homes. Daroka tells them that she and Adonis are just travelers exploring the world. The men burst out laughing, clearly not buying it. Suddenly, she freezes when everyone around her starts collapsing. Adonis walks up and tells her that this is what happens when people drink without checking what's inside. Shocked, she asks what he did, and he calmly explains that he altered the beer, turning it into a tranquilizer. He asks why she couldn't see the spell formula floating around the barrel if she's a witch. She admits she's not good at that stuff, saying she's a bit of an airhead when it comes to magic theory. Realizing that nobody died, she starts to relax. But Adonis, now holding a weapon, tells her it's only temporary. She pleads with him, trying to convince him that these people don't deserve harm. After all, they rescued them from the desert and even helped them recover. But Adonis doesn't care. Just as she begins to think she can't change his mind, he says he won't kill them. However, his reasoning hits hard. He tells her these people aren't even worth killing because they barely count as human to him. As he walks away, he adds that he still believes he doesn't need her. Daroka, devastated, asks why. Adonis answers that unlike her, he can't smile after losing someone important. He can't bring himself to enjoy the company of people like this. That's why he believes they're incompatible. With her voice trembling, she asks what happens if someone figures out who they really are. She suggests they should try to blend in with humans to avoid suspicion. She admits that this whole time, she's been faking smiles and pretending everything's fine because she doesn't want anyone to know she's a witch. Deep down, she's still broken over what happened to her friends. But before she can say more, Adonis cuts her off and tells her not to end up like him if they really are incompatible. Then he turns and leaves her behind in El Paramo. The next morning, Punch's pets find Daroka still sitting alone. Punch asks if her boyfriend ditched her. She says again that they're not a couple, and he responds by saying the guy seemed like a jerk. He left without saying thanks and just abandoned her here. But Daroka, remembering Adonis's final expression, tells him he's actually a very kind person. Somewhere far away, Adonis stands on a hill, looking down at El Paramo with a strange feeling of nostalgia. He recalls her voice as she tried to talk him out of revenge, her words echoing in his head. Suddenly, he hears the roar of a motorcycle approaching and assumes the tranquilizer he used must have been too weak. Watching the dust trail get closer, he quietly prepares to kill whoever shows up. Back in El Paramo, Punch talks to Daroka and admits that he already knew Adonis' identity. He'll never forget the day he saw him nearly dead, accompanied by the ice witch who saved his life. He tells her there's no greater happiness for a man than having something worth fighting the whole world for. Punch admits she might be right about revenge, but whether it's good or bad is a never-ending debate. After all, the world is so cruel, it makes you want to cover your eyes. But instead of doing that, that boy chose vengeance. So even if it kills him, he'll die walking his chosen path. Then Punch asks Daroka what she plans to do next. She lowers her eyes and quietly says she doesn't want to see anyone else die, not after she failed to protect Anna and the others. And that's exactly why Daroka decides she won't let Adonis die. The scene shifts as a motorcycle speeds toward him, and he braces himself, ready to fight whoever it is. But then he realizes it's Daroka, riding straight at him, and for a second she almost runs him over. He steps back just in time, staring at her in disbelief while she comes to a messy stop. She looks at him, breathless, and begs him to let her travel with him. Even though her voice is sincere, the moment takes a chaotic turn because she suddenly starts moving again. As she keeps talking about everything she's been thinking, the motorcycle rolls forward since she clearly doesn't know how to brake. She panics and waves her arms, yelling for help as the bike drifts farther away. Adonis watches her wobble down the road and can't help but crack a smile, thinking about how noisy and unpredictable this witch really is. For all her magical power, she still can't manage a simple machine. In the next scene, Adonis races after her, trying to catch up while shouting instructions on how to stop the motorcycle. He tells her to grip the handles tighter and pull the brake gently, but she just keeps swerving as her hair whips in the wind. Daroka keeps apologizing while struggling to stay upright, and Adonis, almost out of breath. All the citizens gather, eyes locked on the coronation of Her Highness Dorothea. Meanwhile, Oz calmly updates his superiors, reporting that the Central Avenue remains peaceful with no disturbances. At the main ceremony, the announcer recounts everything Emperor Goth did for the Empire and laments his passing. claiming illness finally took his life. Then, trying to soothe the crowd's uncertainty, he shifts tone and proudly declares that a new era is about to begin. As he welcomes the next ruler of the nation, the people erupt in cheers the moment Dorothea steps out. Dorothea puts on a dazzling show that completely charms the crowd, especially the men, leaving them stunned. In the middle of the celebration, one older man grumbles, saying the world is doomed now that a witch is queen. He knows Dorothea wiped out her own kind using science, and now she stands as the ruler of the world. The scene cuts to Dorothea using magic to place the crown on her own head, while her teary eyes scan the crowd. Far away in the southern hemisphere wastelands, Shirasagi watches the ceremony, eyes sparkling with emotion. Yet he quickly gets back to his mission, tracking the device Adonis stole from Yamato. Since he can't find the signal, Shirasagi decides to switch tactics and take a more aggressive route. Meanwhile, Adonis rides across the desert with Doroka clinging to his back, both planning their next move. She suggests that if he insists on continuing this revenge path, he should avoid targeting good people like Punch and his crew. He shuts down the idea, which clearly upsets her, and then says they need to clear the air. Adonis asks her not to get in his way and wants confirmation. Does her magic of love actually work on men? When she nods, he immediately questions why she didn't use it on him in Rhedia, especially if Ophelia had ordered her to capture him, even by force. Doroka replies that she couldn't do that because she figured he wouldn't want their first meeting to be like that. Hearing her answer, Adonis silently agrees. It would have been disgusting if things had started like that. Soon, they arrive at a place called Sand Land, a town that seems completely deserted at first glance. Adonis tells her to stay put while he checks things out, but Doroka insists on coming along, promising not to be a burden. Reluctantly, he lets her tag along and asks what's in the bag she's carrying. She says it's a survival pack from Punch, filled with essentials, including liquor. However, as she keeps listing off its contents, Adonis decides to move ahead quickly and scout the area. While exploring, he's unnerved by the silence. No people, no signs of a fight, just eerie stillness. Doroka makes her way toward the largest building in town, which turns out to be the police station. Adonis thinks it might hold some information, but once they go inside, they're both startled to find it swarming with animals. Doroka screams in fear, which starts to grate on Adonis, although he doesn't say anything. Still, they continue inspecting the place until a hologram suddenly appears behind Doroka, scaring her out of her mind. Thinking it's a ghost, she panics while Adonis figures out it's just a recording. The message plays from what looks like a police officer, and once it ends, Adonis calmly explains to her that it's just a hologram and nothing supernatural. They keep walking through the station until they reach the jail cells. Adonis comments that this place must bring back rough memories for both of them. Suddenly, they hear someone singing. Intrigued, Adonis follows the voice and finds a man inside one of the cells playing a guitar. Doroka tries talking to him, but the man completely ignores her. Frustrated, she yells, startling the man so badly he falls off the bed. Once he sees them, he looks shocked and asks who they are since no one should still be in the town. Doroka tells him they're just passing through, which makes him relax and sit back down. He asks what they're doing here in a place that has nothing, and Adonis throws the question back at him. When the man explains he's still here because he's a prisoner, Adonis doesn't buy it. Suspicious but uninterested in pressing the issue, he decides it's time to leave. Doroka asks if they're really going already, and he says there's nothing here worth staying for. Besides, he hates jails. Hearing this, the prisoner comments that others who left felt the same. After defeating the witches, people believed humanity could no longer live the old-fashioned way, so they chased a bright futuristic vision filled with pride. But to him, it all feels too familiar, just like when the witch hunts began. He goes on complaining that people today still follow the first loudmouth who dares to shout. Adonis doesn't respond and instead asks if there's any large city nearby. The man tells him about a city-state called Mamuda, located roughly 70 kilometers to the east. As soon as he hears that, Adonis looks over at Doroka and tells her it's time to move. She follows him outside, but once they're out, she asks if he's really okay leaving the prisoner to starve. She thinks they should let him go. Adonis brushes it off, saying it's not their problem. Doroka pushes again and asks if they can at least leave him some of the food Punch gave them, but he tells her the cell wasn't even locked. Then he adds something that catches her off guard, that there was a couple in there. Doroka stops, confused, but Adonis explains that what those two really needed wasn't food, they just needed peace. Somewhere quiet, somewhere alone. Inside the building, the man clutches his wife Sasha's body and quietly breaks down. He promises her that the people who called her a witch are long gone. He says they'll always be together from now on. Then, his voice shaking, he apologizes for not being able to protect her when she needed him most. His grief fills the silent room as he holds her closer. Back outside, Adonis and Doroka climb back onto the bike. He tells her that city's already spoken for. There's no place in it for anyone else. Without saying another word, he starts the engine and they ride off, leaving behind the ruins of Sandland and the couple who stayed behind. Adonis and Daroka finally arrive at the city of Amuda, and Daroka is blown away by the sight of its massive immigration gate. She turns to him and asks if he really plans to go up against the people here. When he casually says yes, she grows worried. She reminds him that a city this size is bound to have soldiers, all heavily armed. But he shrugs her off, saying he doesn't care, trying to shift his focus. Daroka suggests they settle things with a game of rock, paper, scissors. She tells him that whoever loses has to obey whatever the winner says, but he flat out refuses to play. Even so, Daroka won't let it go and keeps bugging him to play, though he keeps saying no. As they walk through the city, they realize it's completely in ruins. Adonis clenches his fists, frustrated that humans keep destroying themselves. To him, it means there's nothing left to fight for here. Then suddenly, Daroka points ahead and says it looks like there's a woman nearby. She quickly hops off the bike and runs toward her. Adonis scolds her for letting her guard down like that. Daroka snaps back, saying she doesn't care since the woman seems to be dying. She leans in to ask what happened, but the woman only mumbles that she needs to hurry. Daroka assumes she's running from something, but hearing that, Adonis stiffens and tells her to step back. That woman isn't human. Right then, the robotic woman lashes out at Daroka, and Adonis has to pull out his weapon to save her. After destroying the android, he tells Daroka it was a Medoa, one of the many toys made for human pleasure. Before they can catch their breath, strange noises echo from a place called Hotel Hospital. Adonis immediately senses there are more Medoas inside. He turns to Daroka and tells her to stay put while he handles it, but she insists on coming with him. That just makes him snap. He scolds her for acting without permission and warns her that if she keeps this up, he'll leave her behind. Inside the hotel, Adonis starts his investigation while Daroka secretly follows him from the shadows. She tells herself she doesn't want to upset him, but she made a promise to Punch that she wouldn't let anything bad happen to him. She keeps hidden, believing that even if Adonis catches her, he wouldn't actually abandon her. Then again, she remembers that he already did once. Even so, she still tells herself that he's never truly been violent toward her. But thinking more about it, she realizes that might not be true either. That thought hits hard and makes her start to cry. Suddenly, Adonis appears and catches her in the act. He threatens to kill her for following him and asks if she even takes him seriously anymore. He also questions whether she's doing this on purpose or if she's just a complete idiot. Daroka quickly apologizes, explaining that she thought they'd be safer if they stayed together. Hearing that, he admits it actually makes some sense. He sighs and tells her she can do whatever she wants as long as she doesn't get in his way. Daroka lights up and thanks him, smiling as she calls him a good person. They press on and finally reach the source of the noises. What they find is horrifying. Several Medoas locked in twisted scenes with corpses, lost in lust and corrupted desire. Adonis freezes, stunned by how human they look. Daroka, overwhelmed by shame and discomfort, can barely bring herself to look. Then, one of the Medoas speaks. She says all she ever wanted was someone to love her, no matter who it was. Adonis listens as they ask why they were made like this, why no one ever gave them a choice. The weight of their words sinks in, and Daroka can't hold back the sadness. Adonis realizes these machines are suffering, and he decides to end their pain. The Medoas thank him for it. Meanwhile, the Special Espionage Unit Kunoichi from Suju runs into Ridia's Sentinels. Number 5 turns to Number 6 and says it's time to charge head-on, which her partner agrees is the right move. They move in without hesitation and wipe out the Sentinels quickly and ruthlessly, leaving nothing behind. Back in the ruins, Adonis and Daroka talk about why these sex robots were created in the first place. He tells her it was only a matter of time before humans started building women just to use them for pleasure. He calls them scum for doing it. Suddenly, they stumble upon iron shackles from Ridia's concentration camps. Daroka freezes, remembering how she and Anna were once prisoners too. Adonis explains that even though this country was technologically advanced, importing sex dolls from Ridia wasn't easy. So instead, they started offering up their own women in exchange for more dolls. He thinks Mamuda might have sold off every last woman to Ridia, which shocks Daroka. He tells her they sold their wives and daughters just to buy more machines. That's how far humans are willing to go. No lines, no shame, no limits. Daroka, shaken by everything she's heard, asks if this country really collapsed just because it ran out of women. Adonis nods. He tells her that without women, no new generation could be born, which is why the country couldn't survive. After saying that, he sighs and adds that Mamuda probably isn't the only one that fell apart this way. He admits he doesn't see Gear expansion as anything good, only something disgusting and twisted at its core. Then, without hesitation, he begins constructing a makeshift EMP. His goal is to give the remaining Medoas a peaceful end. Daroka watches closely and asks if this means he's going to be merciful when he kills them. He says that's exactly what he intends, to end everything and give them rest. Once it's ready, he activates a magic formula called Final Pulse and wipes out every last one of the sex dolls. Meanwhile, watching from a rooftop, Number 5 and Number 6 quietly observe Adonis from a distance. Number 6 turns to her sister and says that despite how young he looks, he's caused major trouble for the Ridia Empire. She reminds her that he didn't just kill civilians aliens back in New Nightmare, he also wiped out the entire squad they sent after him. Number 5 sighs and says she thought their unit didn't get involved in matters related to witches. Her sister replies that, officially, that's true, but this time the Emperor of Suzhou personally requested they capture the witch apprentice. That's why they're carrying out this mission now, hoping they can earn their right to live peacefully in the capital. Just before they launch their ambush, though, they bump into Shirosagi, who steps into their path. Without wasting a second, the Kunoichi sisters decide to attack him first. Meanwhile, Doroka kneels beside the grave site of the Madoas and softly apologizes for not being able to do more for them. Adonis, watching her, tells her that praying for them is pointless. Graves and prayers only comfort the living, he says. If she really wants to honor their memory, she should help make humans feel their pain. Doroka disagrees and says she doesn't think like that, which irritates him. Frustrated, he snaps and asks why she doesn't just stay here with them if all she wants to do is cry. He reminds her that all her witch friends died because of the humans he brought, so he genuinely doesn't understand why she'd still want to travel by his side after all that. But just as he thinks she's finally going to walk away, Doroka surprises him. She says she doesn't want to blame him for anything, nor does she want to keep fighting. She explains that the witches only ever wanted to use him as a tool against humanity. Then she asks if that doesn't count as betrayal. Adonis hears her out, then says it's time to go and quietly apologizes for everything he's done. Just as they're about to leave, Shirosagi jumps in and tells them to stop flirting already. Adonis immediately tenses up, realizing they've been found. He shifts into battle mode, ready to fight. But before he can react, Shirosagi destroys their motorcycle with a single blow and introduces himself as a big shot from Ridia, who's here to take Adonis's head. The scene shifts to the intelligence agency, where everyone is watching him through surveillance feeds. They reveal that their system can flag any crime that happens in any part of Ridia, letting them monitor the entire region without lifting a finger. Watching this unfold, Chief Investigator Charmy tells Shirosagi to hurry up and finish off Adonis because she doesn't want to work overtime. Shirosagi, half smiling, fires back and asks if she forgot who's actually in charge around here. Meanwhile, Adonis feels a spike of frustration, blaming himself for not anticipating that they'd be tracked down so quickly. Looking at Shirosagi, he asks about the severed heads he's holding, wanting to know who the girls were. Shirosagi shrugs and says he doesn't know them, but apparently they got here first since they were also after Adonis's head. Without a hint of remorse, he admits he killed them because they got in the way. Then, turning to Doroka, he bluntly asks who she is. Instead of answering, Doroka just scolds him for murdering the girls. Unbothered, Shirosagi walks straight up to her and suddenly asks for a kiss. Seeing that, Adonis steps in and pushes Doroka out of the way, then goes straight for an attack. But Shirosagi, moving so fast that Adonis doesn't even notice, lands a hit before he can complete his magical formula. Still, Adonis refuses to give up. He fires off multiple shots from his weapon, though none of them land because Shirosagi's movement is ridiculously fast. Watching him dodge with ease, Adonis starts thinking that this guy might be a cyborg, so he changes tactics, merging his magical formula into the next bullet. As Charmy notices what he's doing, she immediately warns Shirosagi not to try blocking it. He tells her not to worry, then gracefully dodges the massive bullet Adonis sends his way. Right after that, Shirosagi rushes at him at full speed, so Doroka quickly jumps in and casts her love spell to try to stop him. Seeing it land, Adonis tells her it worked and now's their chance to interrogate him. Doroka agrees, saying she'll follow his lead, but Shirosagi suddenly starts laughing in their faces. He's surprised she used a love spell, then says it makes sense now. She reminds him of the queen. He remembers how the queen once ordered Goth to kill him after hunting witches. Hearing that, Adonis questions him about the queen and wants to know why he's still able to move. Doroka watches nervously, wondering why her spell didn't work. Shirosagi answers by pulling off his shirt and showing them the mark of a different enchantment. Turns out he's already been hexed by another witch. Then he summons weaponry from his back and turns the threat toward both of them. Adonis tells Doroka she's just getting in the way and that she should leave since she can't help right now, but right after saying that, he flashes back to Goth's words and realizes he doesn't want to be like him. Watching Doroka try her hardest, even without magic, makes him pause. He calls her a box full of surprises, then shows her the new formula he just finished preparing. Using it, Adonis suits up in magical armor and hands Doroka a sword. Shirosagi sees this and tells them they'll both be sharing the same fate. As they regroup, Adonis explains that the sword is unbreakable thanks to the Zephyl formula, so even a single swing could tear through almost anything. To help her use it, he also hands over a foolproof fencing manual. Right when things calm down, Shirosagi jumps back in, telling them to stop flirting already. Then he attacks, forcing the two to defend themselves with everything they've got. Adonis thinks they might be able to win, but then notices Daroka is exhausted. Because of that, Shirasagi's assault starts to overwhelm them until Adonis throws himself in front to block the damage. Shirasagi, watching them struggle, mocks them by saying his arms aren't just many, they're also strong. Then he kicks it up a notch and removes the limiter that had been holding back his power. Adonis quickly responds by casting a new magical formula that forms a shield around him. Thanks to that barrier, he tells Daroka to help finish off the remaining arms as fast as possible. Then he calls her over and activates the Gleipnir Cannonball variation, planning to shield them both with its full force. Shirasagi sees the spell forming and counters by activating his own technique, Hummingbird Castillo. Cranking it to full output, he charges directly into Adonis' blast, using his body to try to stop the impact head-on. At first it looks like it might work, but Adonis suddenly lunges forward, forcing Shirasagi to react by unleashing his arms again. However, thinking he had already won, Shirasagi drops his guard for just a second, giving Daroka the perfect opening. Instead of going for the kill, Daroka strikes at Shirasagi's legs, which only makes him laugh. He walks up to her and tells her that if she really wants to finish someone off, she should aim for the head or the heart. Watching this unfold, Adonis charges toward him, furious that she's being attacked. But in his rush, Shirasagi easily swats him away, tossing him aside like nothing. As Shirasagi turns back to Daroka, ready to deal the final blow, Adonis grabs hold of him from behind, locking him in place. He tells him not to beg for mercy, though Shirasagi shows no signs of surrender. Instead, he uses more of his mechanical arms to trap Adonis as well, locking them both in a brutal deadlock. While they struggle, Daroka watches, thinking there's no way she can let him die. Filled with resolve, she gets back up and lunges forward to land a final blow. But before she can reach him, Shirasagi grabs her with another set of arms and lifts her off the ground. Seeing her caught, Adonis grits his teeth and curses the fact that she keeps risking her life for him. Then, without warning, Shirasagi breaks free from his grip and declares that he's going to take her out first. Hanging there with tears in her eyes, Daroka looks at Adonis and thanks him for everything he's done, remembering all their moments together like a final goodbye. Adonis, desperate to break free, uses every last bit of strength he has to reach her. But before he can do anything, Shirasagi destroys his eyes right in front of her. Daroka starts screaming in pain, and the sound drags Adonis back to the memory of Chloe's death. Shirasagi leans in and asks him if this is starting to feel like deja vu. Seeing Daroka suffer, Adonis makes a desperate move and shatters his own armor, trying to break free and reach her before it's too late. But before he can act, Shirasagi rips out her eyes and drops her from high above. Adonis rushes over, frantic, and begs her to hang on. She hears his voice and, trembling, tells him she can't see anything anymore. Looking at the pool of blood beneath her, he realizes she won't survive much longer like this. But Daroka tries to brush it off, saying it's not that bad, and even urges him to escape. She promises she'll catch up later. He tells her to stay quiet because he needs to figure out how to stop the bleeding. Just then, Shirasagi mocks him by holding up Daroka's eyes, laughing. Adonis snaps, his voice wild with rage, demanding he give them back. Shirasagi just keeps toying with the eyes, playing with them like trophies before finally crushing them in his hand and daring Adonis to come at him. Blinded by fury, Adonis charges without hesitation. As they clash, he starts questioning if anything about him has changed at all. But then he remembers his promise to protect Daroka and makes a split-second decision. Using a new magical formula, he takes control of Shirasagi's arms and uses the opening to retreat with her so he can try to heal her. He warns her that it's going to hurt, then uses Shirasagi's own arm thrusters to cauterize the wounds. When he finishes, she thanks him, though she also apologizes for being a burden. He tells her not to talk, but she doesn't listen. Instead, she starts rambling about how nice it would have been to live a normal life together. She wonders where she went wrong, then suddenly loses consciousness, sending Adonis into a panic. Hearing her words reminds him of Chloe again, and his anger boils over as he curses his inability to protect even one person. Fueled by rage, he prepares a powerful magic formula to summon the same giant he once used to attack the capital. Watching the giant rise, Shirasagi looks thrilled, clearly excited for the fight. As soon as Adonis strikes, he demands Shirasagi call the queen here, swearing he'll rip her eyes out just like what was done to Daroka. Shirasagi laughs and asks if he wants to make her just as disgusting as the thing he's holding. They both charge at each other, and during the brutal exchange, Adonis' giant gets destroyed. That only fuels his anger even more. Shirasagi keeps laughing, relentlessly attacking, and mocking how weak he's become. After trading several blows, Shirasagi points out a flaw in his spellwork. He tells him there's always a slight delay between writing and activation since his magic is just imitation. But Adonis doesn't care. All he wants is for Shirasagi to fix Daroka's eyes. Shirasagi tells him to forget it, then snarls that it's time for him to die already. Meanwhile, Daroka slowly regains consciousness and begins calling out for Adonis. She's desperate to find him, but without her sight, it's nearly impossible. Suddenly, she hears his voice, or so she thinks. In reality, it's Shirasagi mocking her. He lifts Adonis's beaten body and holds it up for her to see, asking if this is what she's looking for. Barely clinging to life, Adonis tells her to run, but when she tries to crawl toward him, Shirasagi throws his body aside and pummels him with more blows. Hearing the impact, Daroka tries to move again, but Shirasagi stops her. He rips part of her clothes and punches her in the stomach, yelling at her to stop speaking with the queen's voice. He starts talking about how he met the queen by chance, but came to believe their meeting was destined. He chose to become a slave to her love, and when she accepted him, it brought him nothing but joy. Now he tells Daroka their journey ends here, since the world doesn't need two witches who are two alike. Using the last of her strength, she tries to shield Adonis, still holding on to the belief that everything he's done stems from how humans hunted witches. She admits she no longer knows if humans deserve forgiveness. After everything they've done, vengeance doesn't seem so wrong anymore. Shirasagi doesn't care. He strikes her across the face, saying none of her words matter because he's only here for Adonis's head. But Daroka keeps resisting, yelling at him to stop. Suddenly, Adonis shouts and tells her to hit him with her love spell so he can move using her magic like a puppet. She refuses, but he begs her to hurry or they'll both end up dead. Shirasagi rolls his eyes, annoyed by the back and forth, and punches her again. Just as he's about to decapitate Adonis, Daroka finally gives in and casts the spell. A massive surge of magic rushes into Adonis's body, and without wasting a second, he slams his fist straight into Shirasagi. Right as the blow lands, the scene shifts, pulling us into Daroka's past. Back then, her fellow witches used to ask her about her love spell, clearly uncomfortable with how it worked. They often pushed her away, calling her magic perverted just because it gave her control over human men. She remembers always having to apologize for making witches look bad. Even Ophelia used to shame her, saying her power was impure and way too vulgar for beings as noble as witches. Because of that, they all tried to hide Daroka from the rest of the world, treating her like the black sheep of their kind. After hearing that over and over again, she started convincing herself that she had to become a good witch, even if it slowly drove her mad. Suddenly, Adonis cuts through her thoughts and tells her he finally gets why she was so obsessed with staying pure. Then he tells her to stop holding back and to use her spell without any restraint. To ease her mind, he promises that he won't actually fall in love with her. Hearing that, Daroka accepts and casts her love spell on him. She explains that now he can move freely without being affected by gravity, and nobody will be able to stop him. She even says she's healed all his injuries, including his broken bones, so now he can use his magic without any limits. Shirasagi watches in growing fear as Daroka tells Adonis that he's basically unbeatable now. That's when Shirasagi decides to run for it, but Adonis chases him down with a lightning-fast magic spell he can finally control with ease. Shirasagi, completely shaken, tries to put as much distance as possible between himself and Adonis. Even so, he barely gets anywhere before Adonis catches up in an instant, showing off the ridiculous power boost he just gained. Shirasagi panics, realizing this is not just magical strength, his physical power has also skyrocketed. Adonis walks up to him and crushes one of his hands, saying that's the one that dared to hurt his princess. Right after that, he slices off one of Shirasagi's legs for staining her. Shirasagi screams from the pain, watching helplessly as Adonis prepares to end him for good. Out of desperation, he starts begging for mercy, but Adonis doesn't even acknowledge it. Instead, he starts forming a magical spell. He lifts rubble from the destroyed buildings around them and tells Shirasagi that not even his bones will be left behind. Shirasagi freezes as he watches Adonis cast a spell he once saw Chloe use. Adonis explains to Daroka that this is the same magic Chloe used to end a 100-year drought. He promised he'd only use it to protect someone. Shirasagi, hearing that, can't believe what's happening and feels genuine fear for the first time. Adonis finishes casting the spell, Ritual of Ruin. Shirasagi refuses to give up and sends his hands flying at Adonis, but they're stopped with almost no effort. Panicking, he yells at Daroka to stop him, saying the spell will kill both of them because his body can't take that level of power. Daroka calmly says nothing will happen, explaining that his body won't freeze since she wrapped him in burning flames. Through suggestion magic, she made Adonis light himself on fire, and that leaves Shirasagi completely stunned. Angry that nothing makes sense anymore, he charges at Adonis. But before he can land a hit, his body freezes completely as the spell finishes. The ice spreads like wildfire, and up above, Charmy yells at Shirasagi to escape. It's already too late. Nearly all of Shirasagi is frozen solid. Then Adonis cranks up the power again and flash freezes the entire city. The frost doesn't stop there. Way out in the wasteland, people start noticing the effects. Punch looks out at the blizzard rolling in and tells his people to get to shelter fast. A brutal ice storm crashes over them, and one by one, they start freezing over. Back at the intelligence agency, everyone is panicking as their satellites pick up the intense magical energy. Someone reports to Charmy that they've lost contact with the director, so now they don't even know if he's alive. Charmy stares at the satellite footage, unable to make sense of what she's seeing. Just then, Oz walks up and tells her that taking out the witch's apprentice is not going to be easy. Meanwhile, the people of the Westland try to stay together, barely handling the freezing cold. Punch stares out at the snowy wasteland, wondering if Adonis and Daroka even survived. The scene shifts to the two of them curled up together, still alive, when Chloe's spirit quietly appears beside them. She embraces them both, and with her magic, she helps them survive. Adonis wakes up and sees her, remembering the promise he made. Then Daroka opens her eyes too and realizes she's wrapped in warm armor. As she tries to understand what's happening, she sees Adonis start to collapse. She quickly cancels the love spell and checks his heartbeat, finally relaxing when she hears it still going strong. Suddenly, Shirasaji interrupts, saying they're just like the young queen and the emperor. He begs her, with tears in his eyes, to tell the queen that he did everything he could. And with that, Shirasaji dies. Adonis wakes up again and tells Daroka that he's going to fix her eyes. The story then jumps to the capital, where Queen Dorothea is out jogging, waving at everyone she passes. When she gets back to the castle, she asks if the crowns have replied yet. Her people tell her they haven't, which annoys her because if they don't respond soon, she'll have to act differently. Now we see other nations around the world, and Dorothea is ready to go to war if they don't follow her orders. Back in the snow, Adonis covers Daroka, blaming himself for freezing everything. She apologizes for casting the love spell, saying she absorbed all his real feelings for Chloe. But Adonis tells her it doesn't matter. He asked for that spell, and if she hadn't helped, there's no way he could have taken down that monster. Then he asks Daroka to move her bangs aside so he can get a better look at her injury. She starts apologizing again, worried she looks ugly now, but he cuts her off and says all of this was his fault anyway. Listing off the traits he used to dislike about her, he finally asks her to share a little of that kindness with him. Although he quickly adds she better toughen up a little too. He starts wrapping a bandage around Daroka's eyes, and she softly says it feels like he's hugging her. Hearing that, Adonis smacks her and tells her to quit saying weird stuff, reminding her that the only one who exists for him is Chloe. Still, the two of them set off on the road again, holding hands so she doesn't slip on the ice. In the next scene, Yuki wakes up, swearing revenge for her brother. Meanwhile, Daroka quietly tells him that she finally understands. Maybe revenge isn't so bad after all. And that's how this anime ends, folks.